West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
Good evening, I'm Erin Burnett. Out front tonight, an accused Capitol rioter flips. CNN now learning that one of the people charged after storming the U.S. Capitol has agreed to help the Justice Department in its case against the Proud Boys leadership. It's a significant move, and according to an attorney familiar with the case, it could lead, ready for this, to more severe charges against those allegedly involved in the insurrection. Well, that comes with great implication, right, for anybody who could possibly be blamed for the insurrection? Okay, this is where the former Republican House Speaker John Boehner enters, because he is squarely placing the blame on Trump for the deadly attack on the U.S. Capitol. According to excerpts from his new book obtained by the New York Times, Boehner writes, he never minces words, Trump incited that bloody insurrection for nothing more than selfish reasons, perpetuated by the BS he'd been shoveling since he lost a fair election the previous November. Like I said, Boehner says it like it is. He doesn't mince words. It's a stunning charge, though, from the former Republican House Speaker. Boehner then goes on to say, I quote him again, some of the people involved did not surprise me in the least. The legislative terrorism that I'd witnessed as Speaker had now encouraged actual terrorism. Again, let's just be clear, the significance of this. The former Republican Speaker calling the insurrection itself actual terrorism brought on by members of his own party, people he served with, like Congressman Mo Brooks.
Now, our ancestors sacrificed their blood, their sweat, their tears, their fortunes, and sometimes their lives to give us, their descendants, an America that is the greatest nation in world history. So I have a question for you. Are you willing to do the same? Today is the day American patriots start taking down names and kicking ass.
And that's what they did. That is Mo Brooks, the same man that Trump endorsed today for a U.S. Senate seat. And what you just saw Mo Brooks saying was what he said to that Trump crowd on Insurrection Day in the Washington Mall, on Insurrection Day. So Trump says today about Mo Brooks, few Republicans have as much courage, caps, and fight, caps, as Alabama Congressman Mo Brooks. I think Brooks is fighting for voter integrity like few others. Let's just be honest, the only thing Brooks has had the courage to fight for is Trump's big lie. That would not be voter integrity. But Trump is not the only one trying to whitewash the events of that Insurrection Day. Tucker Carlson is now trying to gaslight his viewers into thinking the insurrection was no big deal.
They didn't have guns, but a lot of them had extremely dangerous ideas. They talked about the Constitution and something called their rights. Some of them made openly seditious claims. They insisted, for example, that the last election was not entirely fair.
Dangerous ideas like the Constitution or their rights? Did you watch what happened that day? Those are not the ideas they were talking about.
Bring out Pence! Bring him out! Bring out Pence!
wasn't just talk. They had a noose that they had put near Capitol grounds. And by the way, as to this, they didn't have guns. The only thing dangerous was their ideas. A police officer was killed. 140 other officers were injured. Cracked ribs, smashed spinal discs, officers hit with baseball bats, flagpoles, and pipes. An officer lost an eye. Another reportedly lost the tip of their right index finger. And yet now we're hearing they didn't have guns. All their extremely dangerous things were ideas like the Constitution. Are you kidding me? All of this happened because of the big lie that the election somehow wasn't fair. John Boehner calls it BS. He's right on that. I can't believe there continues to be a need to repeat such basic fact as this, that the election was fair.
We are not aware of any widespread evidence of voter fraud, much less that would have affected the outcome in the presidential election.
We have not seen any widespread voter fraud.
And remember what Attorney General Bill Barr told the Associated Press, quote, "We have not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected a different outcome in the election." To use Boehner's words, what Trump and his sycophants are pushing is BS. And months later, 3 months later, they're still pushing it, trying to cloak it in some, the only dangerous thing that they were there talking about was the Constitution. Jim Acosta is out front live in Washington. Jim, you of course covered Trump for 4 years in the White House and his campaign before that. And after everything that happened on January 6th, by his actions today, he comes out and endorses Mo Brooks. It's clear that he has not learned any lessons from it.
No, of course, Aaron, he has not learned any lessons. He doesn't think he needs to learn any lessons. And the insurrection on January 6th has propagandists across the Republican Party now. That's very clear from what you just laid out a few moments ago. But I think getting back to whether Donald Trump has learned lessons, I mean, look at the Mo Brooks endorsement. This is somebody who was speaking there on January 6th, as you were just pointing out. But I talked to a Trump advisor, an ally of the former president earlier today, who said this is a mistake for Trump to endorse Mo Brooks. It's going to remind people of what happened on January 6th. But let's go back to the Boehner book that you were just talking about, Aaron. I think it's a perfect illustration of what's going on. Yes, the former speaker tears into Donald Trump, says he's responsible for the insurrection on January 6th. But I talked to a GOP operative who I think put it very well earlier today. The Republican Party is not listening to John Boehner. The Republican Party is listening to Donald Trump. Trump advisor Jason Miller put out a statement earlier today describing Boehner as a swamp creature. And if you need more evidence that the party is listening to Trump, look what's going to take place this weekend down at Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump is going to speak at the RNC donor retreat. It is going to happen at Mar-a-Lago Saturday evening. He is going to be alongside many other leading figures inside the Republican Party. And it's just another shining example, disturbing example, Aaron, that much of the Republican Party has not backed away from Donald Trump. They are enabling Donald Trump. So, no, he has not learned any lessons from January 6th because much of the party is making sure of that.
Right. And then they're behind him. All right, Jim Acosta, thank you very much. Right. So I want to go straight now to Matthew Dowd, chief strategist for the Bush-Cheney presidential campaign of 2004, and Kathleen Blue, author of Bring the War Home, The White Power Movement and Paramilitary America. So thank you both for being with me. Matt, let me just start with you. Boehner said that Trump cost Republicans the Senate in 2020, which, shouldn't be a controversial thing. Just ask any Republican in Georgia. Now Trump is endorsing a candidate in a Senate primary race that's a year away. And not just any candidate, right? But a candidate who was there with him on the podium, on the dais, that day of the insurrection, spreading the big lie. How significant is this?
Well, to me, and I know you'll talk to Kathleen somewhat about this, but to me, there's a huge problem, and it's Donald Trump just represents an effect of the problem, not the cause of the problem in this. And I wouldn't say Donald Trump was a proximate cause of the election losses and the trouble the Republican Party is in. But really, it's a much bigger thing, which is the Republican Party today. This is the first time in American history where the white supremacy movement of America, which showed its face on Insurrection Day on January 6th, has fully taken over one of the legacy parties in America. This is the first time. We've had others. We've had George Wallace and the Independent Party. We've had the Know Nothing movement. We've had elements of the South, which had white supremacy and a part of the Confederacy. But never have we before been one party been completely taken over. And why? It's because that's where the voters are. And unfortunately, I would say America has many great things, but the soil of America, part of the soil of America, this is in the soil of America. And what was different today is we have one legacy party that's completely adopted it, which is a minority of the country, but it is powerful. along with one major cable network. And we've never had that before in America. We've had elements of it, we've had pockets of it, but we've never had that before. And that's the difficult spot we're in as a country today.
So, Kathleen, let me ask you, because, you know, as Matthew brings up, the cable network, right? Tucker Carlson is a smart guy with a giant platform and a large audience, so I don't know why he would say something counterfactual like he did, but this is revisionist history, right? But he's putting out there's nothing dangerous about these people. Gosh, they didn't even have guns. They just had some ideas, right? I mean, it's false. How dangerous is all this?
It's incredibly dangerous. And I think, you know, this is a particularly bold revision that comes not very long after an event that we all watched. That, you know, it's hard to make the argument that they had no guns, that this wasn't intended as a violent action. Some of the people referenced in this particular repainting of the events are people who had quite a few guns, both that they stashed in backpacks outside the Capitol building and that they had in arsenals at their homes. People who had zip ties, who were on their way to very likely kidnap and harm legislators. And now we have news today that these groups are beginning to turn on each other, that we're going to begin to get the kind of information that will let us see what history has indicated is very likely, which is that these groups are interconnected, that the assault on the Capitol was pre-planned, and that it was an attack on our democracy. We know that that's what they were doing because that's what they've been doing for decades, if not generations. And we know that although January 6th was not intended as a mass casualty attack by white power groups and others, that will be the next step. So we don't have time for this revisionist history. It's critical that we act now.
It is Thursday, the 8th of April of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Oh, indeed. Hey, do we have another day for you today? Boy, you know, even though the temperature has been decreased considerably compared to the previous 4 years, the news still keeps it coming. Just a little different, and I think more palpable. Maybe. Such infighting within our party, huh? Everybody, I'm going to keep reminding everybody as long as I'm well able to, and that is, do not fret if the Republican Party ceases to exist. We will not be a one-party system. Not with the Democrats. Oh, no. We'll be lucky if we only get two. Jeez. I swear. And I have a wager on it. If that ever happens, if it's only the Democrats, apparently only the Democrats, we will be a parliament. It's the only way to get it all in. Mark my words. So don't fret about the Republican Party. They can just, wither wherever they will. Wither wherever they will. And they will. Just look at what they're doing. Oh, I love this big news, too. It just came up across my transom from Mark Elias, the voting rights attorney who smashed back all of Trump's lawsuits in all the various states, claiming that the election was stolen from him. And looks like the lieutenant governor of Georgia said, well, we weren't going to start writing any of those bills until Rudy brought us proof. So you would think that, that would nullify any of those bills from becoming law. How can a fraudster, crook, foreign agent be able to, I don't know, use Russian active measures to enact legislation? You would think that would be illegal. And the fruits of that crime should be held in civil asset forfeiture, one would think. If you're going to follow, how they do it to regular people. I guess Rudy's not regular. No, he looks rather irregular. And I don't want to go there, but I just did. So that's somewhat of a big story. And just, as I said, came across my transom, and David spoke about it, or will. So, yeah, I sent that link along as requested, and that could be a pretty darn big story. Mark Elias believes so. And I think that could, I don't know, maybe the Getz thing is to throw off the trail. I don't know. It's just the way of the universe. And I don't even want to talk about Getz. You need more than a shower after that. You need something akin to delousing, or I don't know how they clean off the hazmat people that have to go in and hazmat in Superfund sites. The way they get cleaned up, just hearing the name Getz, and I feel sorry for all the other unrelated Getzes in the world, and there's some too. I feel sorry for them. Oh boy, well, he's in deep doo-doo. Yes, he is. Oh, and then we've got like this, I thought it was a Southern Gothic novel about this Alabama lieutenant governor. Is that? Yeah, lieutenant governor, who I think is, I don't know, maybe he's not so young after all, but his 44-year-old mistress dished some dirt on him, and apparently all of the, I don't know, laws he wanted to enact against LGBTQ type people, he apparently he wanted to play act all that out. And when we say play act, I don't mean just, having tea. Nope. It was rather graphic, as they say. And, so I thought it was a Southern Gothic novel, but no, it's real life. Boy, that's reality TV I want nothing to do with. And but it's out there. And it just goes to show that projection is their name. Anytime you hear about some sort of repressive law being enacted and you look at the person frothing about it, you know what the problem is. Yeah, they are incapable of dealing with their own behavior and accepting it, or, I don't know, not doing it. If it bothers you so much, stop doing it. Oh, no, I got to make sure nobody does this. Because it goes back to this really weird narcissistic attitude about we as a species. That if I'm doing it, I'm a really good person. If someone else is doing it, it's got to be really bad. So if someone good like me would fall to it, what about all the rest of the world? Yeah. Well, you know what the rest of the world would say? To each their own, and you're a creep. So, creep away, just not around us. All right? Thank you very much. We have former speakers of the House actually in the news now. And John Boehner, I guess, well, he wrote a book, and there must be some audio version of it, because he has the dulcet tones of a smoker, whiskey drinker. I know they say that he only has Chablis, but the guy's also got some whiskey in there somewhere. You just know. Anyway, he had some dirt to dish, and the book's, I don't even think's been published yet. Well, I guess it will be now. So, thank you, John Boehner, at the top for all of that. And before we get into the curated part of the show, I guess we should mention about how the world might be going to hell in a handbasket if we don't do some, major work. And I'm not talking necessarily about Russia trying to expand their borders again, rattling their sabers or whatever it is they do with their Russian crouched saber sword dance. Is it a saber sword dance? Anyway, not just that, but I think that we have to really work hard about lessening the temperature of the actual atmosphere of the earth. And I know the Republicans think that aiding old people is not infrastructure, and moving towards some other fuel source is a sin against God and humanity. I know they think that. They believe it. In fact, they were willing to have a riot and an insurrection over it. Well, that was only part of it. It was white grievance and racism, which is, I think, the same thing. Anyway, we have our work cut out for us, and I will advocate for Joe's plan, because this is the right step in, well, if we're going to decrease the temperature in D.C., we might as well decrease the temperature in the whole wide world so that we can all live in some sort of blissful harmony within the constraints of, I don't know, a savage world. At least we can breathe in it and not get cooked. All right, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays? The Biden administration has been examining the files for more Trump-era migrant family separations than has been previously known. Indeed. Rudy Giuliani begged the judge to throw out the $1.3 billion lawsuit over his big lie election claims. Yeah, he begged. And there is no reconciling Manchin's opposition to budget reconciliation. What's up, Joe? After the break, we move to the chef's table, where gender equality issues took center stage when EU President Ursula von der Leyen was treated like a second-rank official during talks with Turkish leader Erdogan. Yeah. There were three leaders, Erdogan, I can't remember the other guy, and the EU Commission president. The two guys sat, made her stand, actually made her sit on a sofa kind of far away. Uh-huh. That's how it works. And, as a counterpoint, Australia will end sexual harassment exemptions for judges and politicians. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link right there by the social media scroll. And the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. If you would then look across the page from the chat room link, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, there is the link to our Patreon site. And if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds to us once a month, you help us fulfill our civic duty. And how is that done? Well, 10 years ago, yes, I'm going to keep saying this probably for the whole year. 10 years ago, we began this little powerhouse that could, and we're still continuing 24/7, 365 Resistance Radio broadcasting because of your generosity. Folks like you decided that they could afford an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds to us once a month. And we put that in with the dollars that we pull out of our own wallets, and we pay our bills. We fly under the radar. We also, in the midst of all this, are we have to continue doing this. We've done it a couple of times in the 10 years, and that is recycle newish machinery through here so that these powerhouse broadcasters can keep broadcasting their powerhouse resistance radio as the founders originally intended, so many years ago. So thank you for your generosity, and I also want to give a big shout out to those who have increased their generous patronage recently. It has come at a very needy time. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, go to @Netroots Radio on Twitter. Tom takes care of that and so much more. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter, and you can do that at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that posted up on Twitter and other social media platforms, and you know who they are. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found, mixed in with all the rest of us. Okay. All right. Is that a humble brag? Yes, that's a humble brag. Okay, I was getting into a little tete-a-tete with Glenn Greenwald this morning, and you don't want to do that because you can waste a lot of time. Jeez. Anyway, I won't even mention too much about it. Go to my Twitter feed, and you'll see the little back and forth. But I get a little tired of apologists for Nazis and insurrectionists and racists and all that stuff because it's some sort of both-siderisms. Give me a break. Oh, God. Do you remember any Democratic official or anybody saying, let's storm the Capitol and erect the gallows? And, no. So stop with this both sides thing. We've just accepted it. Okay? When we were pissed off that it looked like in 2000 Bush won in an illegitimate way, well, we just had to accept it, especially when Al Gore said, it's what the Constitution requires, and I'm following the Constitution. So, we follow the rule of law, even though it sucks. And then we figure out how to legislate in the midst of that and move on and try to make life more equitable, not disequitable. Is there such a thing? Yes, there is. There's a thing. I don't know if there's an actual word. But so I just get a little tired for the apologies for those that want to rip personal liberties away because, you used some sort of icon that those other people over there had one time. Let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Did I tell you it's Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays? Yes, I did. And I'll keep saying it. At the appropriate time, hopefully. Ted Hessen and Mika Rosenberg, or is it Micah? Might be Mika Rosenberg of Reuters, brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Biden administration said yesterday, Wednesday, it is examining 5,600 previously unreviewed cases of migrant children to see whether they were separated from parents at the U.S.-Mexico border under former President Donald Trump. A U.S. Department of Homeland Security official told reporters the review seeks to find any separated children beyond those already identified through litigation. The official said the aim is ultimately to reunite any families who remain apart. The effort is expected to uncover a small number of additional separations on top of the thousands that have already been reported. The whereabouts and status of the 5,600 migrant children whose cases are being reviewed remains unclear. DHS did not immediately respond to a request for comment. President Joe Biden, who took over from the Republican Trump on January 20. I think the reporters think that we don't know that, but they may be writing to an international audience, that might not know. Anyway, Joe issued an executive order in February to create a task force to reunite children and parents still separated by Trump's zero-tolerance border strategy. Thousands of children were separated from their parents at the southwestern U.S. border under the policy, which charged parents with federal immigration offenses and sent them to jails, while children were labeled unaccompanied and placed in shelters. Jeff Sessions, who spearheaded the effort as Trump's attorney general, defended the prosecutions in an interview with Reuters in March, saying a person traveling with a child shouldn't be given immunity. Sessions expressed regret, however, that the Trump administration could not quickly reunite the parents and children afterward because they failed to set up any system to do so. Convenient now, isn't it? A Biden administration task force has yet to reunite any of the still separated families, the DHS official told reporters. The task force aims to build a comprehensive database of families that were separated under Trump's zero tolerance policy and related measures during the 4 years he was in office, the DHS official said. The Biden administration is scouring government records to search for additional separations and information that might help unify families, according to the official. There is also a lot of misinformation in the files, wrong dates, confusion in names, doubled up cases. Those are just a few of the issues we are discovering, they continued. The ACLU, through litigation, has identified around 4,000 children who were separated from their parents under the policy. Some families have already been reunited as part of litigation challenging the separation, while other families remain apart, including some whose parents were deported. I don't know why this next offering should come out of like one of those periodicals that line the checkout stand at some supermarkets in the South, but it's coming out of Reuters by Jan Wolfe today here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Donald Trump's former personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, asked a judge, I think he begged a judge yesterday, Wednesday, to throw out a voting machine company's $1.3 billion defamation lawsuit relating to his false claims about the November 2020 presidential election being rigged. Giuliani's attorney said in a court filing that Dominion Voting Systems lawsuit should be dismissed for lack of jurisdiction and because the company has not adequately justified its request for money damages. The filing said Giuliani denies defaming Dominion, adding that the former New York City mayor would present a more forceful defense on the merits of his jurisdictional arguments rejected by the federal judge in the District of Columbia who was assigned to the case. Should this matter reach legal or factual adjudication on the merits, Giuliani will provide a vigorous and complete response, the court filing stated. Oh, so Giuliani is threatening them that I'm going to show you how the whole thing was rigged and Trump really won defense? Okay. Megan Meyer, a lawyer for Dominion, said in a statement that Giuliani said he wanted to present the evidence for his defamatory statements about Dominion, but now he's trying to avoid a trial and still offering no evidence at all. Denver-based Dominion alleged in his January 25 lawsuit that Giuliani manufactured and disseminated the big lie, which foreseeably went viral and deceived millions of people into believing that Dominion had stolen their votes and fixed the election. Dominion said it filed the lawsuit to set the record straight and to stand up for itself, its employees, and the electoral process. Founded in 2002, Dominion is a major U.S. manufacturer of voting machines, and various Dominion machines were used in more than 24 states during the 2020 election. Dominion has similar defamation lawsuits pending against Fox News, former Trump campaign lawyer Sidney Powell, and pro-Trump businessman Mike Lindell of My Pillow Inc. Like Giuliani, they have denied defaming Dominion. speech of Reuters brings us this final offering here at the Bistro Cafe in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays. You know, you would think that if you elected a Jewish senator in Georgia, along with a black senator in Georgia, that you would have some sort of, well, wherewithal to understand where the country is going. But not Joe Manchin. He's a pivotal vote in the evenly divided Senate, and he said yesterday he was opposed to a process called reconciliation that makes it easier to pass bills without Republican support, a potential blow to President Joe Biden's chances of passing a huge infrastructure package. Manchin also said he would not support any step to weaken the ability of Republicans to mount filibusters to block legislation. Some Democrats want to toss aside the filibuster rule, which requires 60 votes in the 100-member chamber to approve most bills. I simply do not believe budget reconciliation should replace regular order in the Senate, Manchin said in an opinion piece in the Washington Post. Senate Democrats must avoid the temptation to abandon our Republican colleagues on important national issues. Well, Joe, and I don't mean Biden, Joe Manchin, I think the Republicans abandoned America a long effing time ago. And you want to protect their right to continue doing that? To drag America down with them? Why, Joe? Why? Democrats relied on the budget reconciliation process to avoid a possible Republican filibuster and pass Biden's $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief bill in March with a simple majority in the Senate. They have been considering doing the same with Biden's proposed infrastructure package. The filibuster is a critical tool to protecting that input and our democratic form of government. That is why I've said it before, and will say it again, to remove any shred of doubt. There is no circumstance in which I will vote to eliminate or weaken the filibuster. How about strengthening it, Joe? How about making them talk until they have to pee in a catheter bag? How about that? Bring back the old days, Joe. Come on. Every time the Senate voted to weaken the filibuster in the past decade, the political dysfunction and gridlock have grown more severe. Manchin wrote, saying it was time to end political games and return to a new era of bipartisanship. You mean the kind that when the black president came into office, the bipartisanship went so far as to try to keep him as a one-term president, and when that didn't work, they decided to throw in with the Russians. And then when that didn't work, they decided to violently overthrow an election? You mean that kind of bipartisanship, Joe? Do you mean that bipartisanship? If we're going to go for that bipartisanship, Joe, once again, make the loyal opposition talk until the crows go home. Is that how it goes? I like it anyway. And make them pee in a bag. Okay? It better not be paper. Not like the insurrectionists that stormed the Capitol on January 6th. Okay, enough of that rant. Let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science Podcast. I'm Clara Moskowitz. There are probably many more particles out there in the universe than the ones we know about. And today, physicists got a hint about where they might be hiding. The finding comes from an experiment at Fermilab called muon G-2, which looks at particles called muons that are heavier cousins of electrons. It turns out their spins wobble more than the standard laws of physics say they should. Here to tell us all about it is David Herzog of the University of Washington, one of the physicists on the experiment. By the way, this segment is on the longer side, dear listener, but hey, this is complicated physics. David, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Claire. This is a really exciting time for us.
Okay, let's get grounded. Why are muons important?
Well, since the discovery of the muon, it's played actually a rather unique and versatile role in subatomic physics. The topics that people use muons for range from fundamental constants of nature, basic symmetries, weak nucleon and nuclear interactions. And for us, what we care about the most is standard model tests and searches for new physics. That's what we're going to do with them. Now, the muon is an unstable particle. It only lives for about 2 microseconds. But that's sufficiently long to precisely study its properties, and yet it's actually sufficiently short so that we have enough decays that we can also study. A lot of tremendous information are in the decay processes. Now, by a quirk of nature, which we call parity non-conservation or space non-conservation, muons are born what we call fully polarized, meaning they have spins in a direction that we go, like tops do. And when they decay, we say they are self-analyzing, which means we can figure out which way they were spinning when they decayed. And these two attributes are essential for the experiment that I'm going to talk to you about.
So tell us why you ran this experiment in the first place. Why look at muon spin?
Well, when we measure the rate that the muon spin wobbles, or I use the word precesses in a magnetic field, we learn directly about its own magnetism, which we call the magnetic moment. But you might ask, what do we care about that for? Well, the laws of physics actually predict this magnetism very, very precisely. And the laws, if we think we know them completely, in turn tell us the rate of that wobbling that we should expect in the magnet. So by measuring the rate, we can learn if the laws of physics are missing anything.
Now tell us about the setup of this experiment. In basic terms, how did it work?
It is a very, very complicated setup, Claire, but let me just try to break it down simply. We shoot big batches of muons into a large 14-meter diameter superconducting magnet. All of them we shoot in with their spins kind of lined up in the direction they're going, like headlights on a car. Now, when the muons begin to circulate and run around the magnetic ring, they sort of act like race cars going around a circular track. So as they go round and around and around, it turns out that the direction that their spins point no longer stays kind of lined up with the way they were when they were injected. And every 29 times around the track, the spin direction actually makes an extra full turn. So this difference is what we measure. We measure the difference between the spin direction and the direction the muons were going. That signal then is all tied up in the comment I made about parity violation earlier in self-analyzing spin, I said. We record the products of the muon decays when they spin around like that, and we collect them into a spectrum that ends up with a kind of a modulation exactly at that lapping frequency. So the lapping frequency is the ticket, how fast the spin goes around faster than the muon runs around.
And what did you find?
Well, we found that wobble frequency was faster than the prediction. And we found also, interestingly enough, that the same kind of level faster than what had been measured 20 years ago at Brookhaven National Lab. So we confirmed this value that was out there for about 20 years that people were kind of like, is that right?
So what does this mean, and why is it so exciting?
Well, it's truly exciting because the significance of the difference now between the prediction and the experiments is so high that it looks like it might be revealing something. 20 years ago, there was just a soft difference between the prediction, but we have a higher precision experiment now, and when we combine that with the measurement from 20 years ago, the precision is pretty high, and we're really at the level where people begin to think this starts to look a bit like a discovery. So at the very beginning, Claire, what you said was perhaps there are more particles in the universe than the ones we know about. And it's those extra particles which would cause this spin to go faster than the prediction. It is such a complicated experiment. We're publishing 4 papers at once, probably 100 pages in the journals to explain the whole thing. I've been doing this for about 30 years. So you also realize we do this blinded, right?
Right. So when did you find out?
Just about a month ago. So, just enough to put in the numbers into the final plots and to write the beginning and ends of the paper. 90% of the paper is written before we know the result. And basically, you have 170 people sitting on a Zoom meeting that all have to be satisfied and vote. And then we reveal these secret envelopes, and then we decode the clock frequency, and suddenly we see the result. It's really unnerving, but it absolutely means we're not biased as to what we're going to get, because we have no way to change the number after we type in the secret code.
And what did you feel when you saw that number?
To be honest, we all screamed in excitement, but maybe for different reasons. For me, having been involved in this so long ago and also being involved in the previous experiment, I was extremely happy that we were verifying that the previous experiment was correct. But then the second emotion comes along that the two of them together now push the difference to what's actually called 4.2 standard deviations, which means it's about a 1 in 40,000 chance or so of being a fluke. And that really is exciting because we're all looking for new physics.
That's amazing. So we might actually be seeing the work of particles that we never knew about before.
It sure does, but we do have more work to go. We're just sitting on the smallest pile of the data so far in terms of the results. We have a lot more data that we're taking as we speak, and only then, when we analyze all of it, might we actually know, the final truth to this. But the other thing that this makes it kind of interesting is from all of the students and postdocs and young people still working on this with so much more data to go, basically, we're not quite over the line of what they call discovery at 5 standard deviations. So this is very motivating for us to finish the job, since we have so much more data that we can look at. All of it sort of fell in the right place to keep it kind of cool.
Well then, I'm going to stay tuned. Thank you so much, David.
You bet. It was enjoyable.
For Scientific American's 60-Second Science podcast, I'm Clara Moskowitz.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day sparring between Henry Ford and John L. Lewis spilled over into the press. The CIO formally declared their organizing drive of some 150,000 workers at the Ford Motor Company. John L. Lewis addressed a crowd of 25,000 the night before at the Detroit State Fairgrounds Coliseum, celebrating the recent organizing victory at Chrysler. Lewis thundered, "Henry Ford will change his mind." He added that the victories at Chrysler and General Motors came as a result of workers' dissatisfaction with their conditions. Lewis also noted that Ford Motor Company prevented workers from joining unions through a system of intimidation and coercion. Ford insisted he would never recognize the UAW or any other union in response to sit-downs at Ford plants in Kansas City and St. Louis. Notoriously anti-Semitic, he then alleged that international banking interests financed CIO organizing drives. Ford maintained workers had no reason to celebrate organizing victories, claiming workers had lost through joining unions. He said they've had their freedom taken away. They pay money to the unions and get nothing in return. But Ford was also one of the few industrial employers that hired blacks. Organizing at Ford meant organizing black workers. It meant bringing black workers on as organizers and staffers in the UAW. The UAW waged a pointed campaign to attract black workers at Ford and concentrated efforts at the massive River Rouge complex. UAW leaders Homer Martin and Wyndham Mortimer urged black workers to join up with them, saying, quote, "We must solve together, not pitted against one another, all discrimination." It would take more than 4 years to finally organize at Ford, but black workers were at the forefront of that struggle. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 44 degrees Fahrenheit. Expected to be even a bit cooler than yesterday, though yesterday wasn't as cool as they had forecast it to be. We actually got up into the upper 70s yesterday. Today, though, we are expecting only highs in the upper 50s to low 60s, and we will be in an active freeze warning or watch beginning late tonight till about 9 a.m. tomorrow local time. Partly to mostly cloudy today with winds out of the north at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Once again, lows tonight in the low 30s, a clear sky, and winds will be out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10. Mainly sunny tomorrow with highs in the upper 60s, winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon, where they like to say that the virus doesn't exist, it's all a hoax. Masks are a violation of my civil liberty to, infect you. Well, we keep increasing our virus totals here, unfortunately, and we now stand at 9,458, with one more dead at 124. Well, that's a record we don't like. I wish people would do more than wash their hands, and I'm afraid they don't even do that. Grass pollen is rated as low here at the mothership in Rogue River proper, and the air quality index for the region is still in the good range at 37 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is still high at that high of 6. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.32 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 74%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsources from around the world. London is 53 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 57 and sunny. Rome is 58 and sunny. Kyiv is 46 and fair. Kabul is 56 and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 70 degrees and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 54 and fair. Sydney, Australia is 68 and clear. San Francisco, California is 48 degrees and mostly cloudy. And New York is a springtime-like 62 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsources from around the world. Samuel Petroquin of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Gender equality issues took center stage yesterday, Wednesday, in Brussels, a day after Ursula von der Leyen, one of EU's most powerful executives, was treated like a second-rank official during a visit to Ankara. Von der Leyen, the European Commission President, and European Council Chief Charles Michel visited Turkey on Tuesday for talks with Turkish leader Erdogan, focusing on the EU-Turkey relations. After they were led in a big room for discussions with Erdogan, TV images showed that only 2 chairs had been laid out in front of the EU and the Turkish flags for the 3 leaders. Michel and Erdogan took the chairs as von der Leyen stood looking at both men, expressing her astonishment and with a gesture of disappointment. Von der Leyen eventually sat on a large beige sofa away from her male counterparts. According to an EU source, the meeting between the 3 leaders lasted more than 2 hours and a half. The important thing is that the president should have been seated exactly in the same manner as the president of the European Council and the Turkish president, EU Commission Chief Spokesman Eric Mammers said, adding that von der Leyen was surprised by the arrangements. She decided to proceed nevertheless, prioritizing substance over protocol. But nevertheless, let me stress that the president expects that the institution that she represents to be treated with the required protocol, and she has therefore asked her team to take all appropriate contacts in order to ensure that such an incident does not occur in the future, Mamer said. He added that von der Leyen's protocol team did not travel to Turkey with her due to the coronavirus pandemic. There was no immediate comment from the Turkish presidency because Erdogan's a dick. Michel said the embarrassment was the result of the strict interpretation by Turkish services of protocol rules and regretted the differentiated, even diminished treatment of the president of the European Commission. That's a nice way of saying that, hey, women are second-class citizens. Why are they going to be sitting with the men? We can't allow that to be shown. Remember when they looked at Turkey as being, I don't know, a hope for the future? Yeah, they used to.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Brian Kay of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Australia will scrap exemptions for judges and politicians from sexual harassment laws, Prime Minister Scott Morrison said today, as his government struggles to contain a backlash over allegations of mistreatment of female lawmakers and staff. Under broad changes aimed at empowering complainants in workplace gender-related disputes, employers will be required to take a proactive approach to stopping gender discrimination, while complainants get a longer period of time to lodge complaints. Early last year, Australia's Sex Discrimination Commissioner called for broad changes to workplace laws, including removing exemptions for public sector employers and people who hire volunteers. Morrison said he would adopt all 55 of the commissioner's recommendations, which include a blanket ban on workplace gender discrimination, mandatory training of company directors, and reporting by listed companies, as well as improved coordination between complaint handling agencies. Well, that is good news. And it also brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.